phone as you come down, you say Tachon over here.
Anyway,
You didn't say.
so this in the chassid. Anyway, so anyway, so we saw yesterday, we saw a Mishnah. The Mishnah said, "Are Pesachim samech lemincha, Are Pesachim samech lemincha, layochel you should not eat at shetechshach." In order why we saw the mitzvah that sheep at the oven. The Gemara asked the kasha, what was the big deal of what of what was the big deal of Arvei Pesachim? Who adin what? Who adin Shabbos? Who adin Yotif? That Rabbi Yehuda says Mincha L'Mayla. So Samech L'Mincha we decided was Samech L'Mincha Ketana. Mincha Ketana is 2.5 hours before the day is over. Correct. So Samech L'Mincha that we saw the Rashi and Rashi a half hour before that. So 3 hours before the day is over. Right at that point in time, you should not go ahead and eat. So we said the Mishnah. It's Shver Rabbi Yehuda says, the Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yossi. What did Rabbi Yossi say? That you could eat at shetechshach. Where does he say at shetechshach? That's only by Shabbos v'yontif. Mashen came by Pesach. He's moida to eat matzah l'te'oven. I'll say the mitzvah. Rabbi Yossi is moida that you cannot eat. So the Mishnah is according to Rabbi Yossi. And the Kiddush is, even though by Shabbos v'yontif, Rabbi Yossi says you could eat at shetechshach. By Pesach, he's moida samech l'mincha you should not eat. Okay, that was one teretz. We tried a second teretz. The second teretz of Papa. We brought in a brisa that said that Yehuda also holds samich lemincha. It was couched in the lashon of shalei mitesha shoyis, 9 hours in the day, which is the same thing, 3 hours short of 12. So we proved that it can't be because wanted to first say that brisa was mishtabech, mishtaratz, that wasn't good. We proved it is good because when Pinchas would use it in a share. So that's what we're holding. We're holding that the Mishnah is only according to Rabbi Yossi, that even though Rabbi Yossi holds by Shabbos v'yontif, you can eat at shetechshach. When it comes to Pesach, because of the inyan of Hiddur mitzvah, again, the mitzvah of eating matzah l'te'oven, then what we're going to say that he's moida that you should not. I'm just thinking, if anyone think this out, Hiddur mitzvah, what's the difference? We're saying over here, Hiddur mitzvah is nasiyas ha-mitzvah. In other words, not just the chetz of the mitzvah. Usually, the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf Lamed Gimel, the Gemara says, "What's mitzvah? Hisna before zekeli vanveyu, hisna before b'mitzvah sna, sukkah no, tzitzis no, estrig no, sefer Torah no." Usually, no is in the chetz of the mitzvah. It's an object. Over here, we see that the hidden mitzvah is in the pu'ula, in the action of performing the mitzvah. Is there any difference? I'm throwing this out because I'm thinking about it between Hiddur mitzvah and mitzvah min hamufchar. At times we use the lashon mitzvah min hamufchar. Something is a mitzvah min hamufchar, right? Something is a mitzvah min hamufchar. So now, just since we do have a lot of time, let's see a little Torah, right? We said over here what that the reason why Rashi brings over here the reason why you do not go ahead and eat matzah is because why? It's because of Hiddur mitzvah. But if you look in the Gemara on Kuf Zayin, the Gemara on Kuf Zayin gives us a whole different view. The Gemara on Kuf Zayin. The Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph, I know our scholars have it because it's the last chelik, and the Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph, if you go 2 lines to the bottom, right, 2 lines to the bottom, Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph, it says Samech Lemincha, Iboilahu. When it says Samech Lemincha, Iboilahu to following Shaila. Samech Lemincha Gedoyla Tanan, does it mean a half hour before Mincha Gedoyla? Now, what's Mincha Gedoyla? 6.5 hours into the day. Guys, Mincha Gedoyla is 6.5 hours into the day. So, Somech LeMincha Gedoyla would be, right? Would be 7 hours into the day. It would be 6 hours into the day, right? It would be 12 o'clock. It would be 12 o'clock, right? It wouldn't be 12:30. It would be 12 o'clock. Dilma, Samech LeMincha Ketana Tanan. When the Mishnah said Samach Lemincha, it means Samach Lemincha Katana. You guys know the answer to this already, because we answered Samach Lemincha Katana, but the Gemara developed it. Samach Lemincha Katana, 9.5 hours, and today we're 3 hours, right? Samach Lemincha Gedoyla Tan Umishim Pesach. Maybe you don't eat because of Pesach, right? So why? In other words, what are we worried about? Well, Pesach. If you start sitting down, you're busy with a Suda, you may come to be negligent in bringing the Korban Pesach. So therefore, it's not a din in Achila per se, vis-a-vis you're filling your stomach. It's a din in being busy. Like like with Chanukah lich, right? Don't be sued by Chanukah lich. You shouldn't be pashay and late. So maybe it means mincha gedoyla over here, and what you're worried about is what, in fact, you may come to go ahead and be negligent. That's one way shot. Or Dilma, because Dilma asin memshach vasi lemnuyim elav pischa. You want something in your Pesach. Like Dilma on the base is samach lemincha ketana tanan or mishamatza. Now, what should it say mishamatza? What should it say? That you should eat it because of hida, right? What does it say? Dilma asil michla lematza chilagasa. Maybe you may come to eat. You may to come eat matzah with an achila gasa. In other words, your stomach will be full, and the achila will not be an achila of te'avan. The achila will be an achila gasa. Now that doesn't. Now Rashi knew this Gemara, and the Rashbam knew this Gemara, right? So it's questionable. What does it mean over here that you're coming to eat achila gasa? And what is wrong with achila gasa? So let's spend a little time on this. Again, we're going to do the daf. Don't worry about it. You'll go home. The daf is quick. It's shmak and everything. And this is just a way you're going to fill in. It's called learning lishma. Learning Torah for the sake of Torah. It's just a shmak thing. So now, guys, an achila gasa by Yom Kippur. Want to hear a fascinating halacha? If you eat an achila gasa, I don't know why I'm looking at you up. If you eat an achila gasa on Yom Kippur, you're pata. You're pata. You know why? Because achila gas is not an achila. The achila for chorus is when you eat an achila, a food. Here, when you stuff yourself to a point where your mamish like.
The Vini's table's coming out.
Okay, so let's see Taisus here. Let's see Taisus. Second Taisus down on Kuf Zion on the base. Dilma asi lemecha achila gasa. The Eina Achila, and that's not considered Achila. Kidarmina beperek basra diyuma. Oicha Achila gasa b'yom kippurim. Samra eats Achila gasa b'yom kippurim. Potter. So in other words, guys, if you're going to eat to the extent where you're so stuffed, when you eat the matzah, it won't be considered Achila, and you won't be yotz in the mitzvah of matzah. You won't be yotz in the mitzvah of matzah. So this is very different than Hiddur mitzvah, guys. Hiddur mitzvah is I'm being kind of the mitzvah, and I'm doing it the best way possible, right? Over here, it seems to be a kilagasi where you won't be kind of the mitzvah at all because you'll be stuffed. Anyway, so the question, I mean, in Nazir, Gabi Pesach, she'achlu achila gasa, u'poishim yikashlu ba, u'parach rasha karaslay, nehid layavid mitzvah min amufchar. A good he didn't do a mitzvah min amufchar because he was stuffed, but Pesach mir ka'avid, he brought his carbon Pesach. So it's mashma that it is considered an achila. The trade gavni achila gasa. There's two types of achila gasa. Achas nafshu kotzim ilachol. In other words, you get to a point where you can't eat anything. It would disgust you to eat anything. You're so full that you just can't eat anything.
Even Jello?
Oh, that's the next one. But let's say part to b'yom kippur. The yesh achila gasa she'enim is avalechol. Bill Cosby over there. Yesh achila gasa she'enim is avalechol. Ach, yesh bohem tam. You know, guys, you eat a meal, you're sitting there, zat, you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden comes out a dessert. How is it that all of a sudden you have room? It's crazy. You're zat. If they didn't bring anything out, you would be zat. You'd be satisfied. It won't make a difference. But guess what? Avrami, is this true? Oh, Emes. Okay, so now. Yeah. Anyways, so anyway, so there's always room for Jello. Oh, right. See, he's Machavin. Mendy. Yeah, I'm saying, forget about the liquid. We know that people go to a wedding, they fresh their face off, they eat, and they can't even get up. The tablecloth is an ogre to get up off the table, and then all of a sudden they bring out what? They bring out a Viennese table I used to bring out, right? And all of a sudden they bring out that hot cinnamon buns with the ice cream and the brownies, and I'm telling you, there's a line at the door. You know, what is that? That's the second level. That's the second level. So when do we say you're not Yaitz on Yom Kippur? When do we say you're not Yaitz, not Achila? That's level number one. That's no matter what they bring out, you're not eating. No matter what they bring out, you're not eating. And then there's a second level. That's what we're discussing over here. We're discussing a level where what that it's not Achila. It is an Achila, but it's not the best. Shay gave me achila gasa. Acha shenav shekotzi milachal eloi sepota b'yom kippur. V'yesh achila gasa she'ena misav lechal. Ach yesh potam. V'hod Pesach nechal asaveya hainu shemisav lechal k'tzas. So when we say the Korban Pesach is eaten al soiva, guys, right? He's asking a kasha. Are you supposed to eat the Korban Pesach al soiva? Are you supposed to be satiated? So how can you tell me that that's not an achila, right? You're going to want to tell me that's not an achila? In other words, put yourself in a position that your achila shouldn't be an achila. What we're supposed to. So that's the answer is the second level of the achila gasa of Rabbeinu Tam, where there's always room for jello, right? There's always a little bit of room. That's what we're speaking about over here. Another teretz is you can't call him Russia, even though he's eating, he's stuffed up. It's because 40 is Mimakaim, it's the Korban Pesach. After Bishlei Kaim, this is Achila. Achila is Pesachim Lema Akva. Okay, that's very, very Geshmak and Shach. Guys, we saw earlier in the Masechta that there's a mitzvah being the Korban Pesach. What happens if are you supposed to eat it? Yes. What happens if you don't eat it? Is it good? It's still good, right? That was the Chiddush. Good. So let's say you are stuffed. You brought the Korban Pesach, right? And now you can't eat it. As boss. You brought the Pesach. So we can't call you a Russia like you did a mitzvah. Okay, so those are two different things. Now, how do we go ahead and answer up over here the concept of you saying hidden mitzvah, and over here it's mashma al achila gasa, right? Why did Rashi and Rashbam in our Mishnah? Why did they go ahead and explain it a totally different way? Why did they explain it in a totally different way? They didn't explain it as achila gasa. They didn't explain us achila gasa. They wanted to say that you should go ahead and eat. Okay, so Bez Hashem, we have to work on. We have what to work on. Another good ha'ara is yesterday. This is a good ha'ara I have. Again, it's not a great teretz, but it's a great kasha. The Mishnah said, why can't we saw a Taisus? Why can't you be mitzi a person by arbakaisis? Why is it different than kiddush, right? Guys, I'll tell you a big difference in that and kiddush. A much bigger difference. A much bigger difference. I'm gonna listen to the difference. By kiddush, is it a din in wine, or the din is kiddush and you just have to make it on wine? What? You can make it on bread too. You can make it on bread too. You love wine, you make it on bread. No, it is kiddush, and they would kaveh kiddush on the kais, but there's no intrinsic mitzvah in the wine. Arba kaises. So what's this kasha? What? How can you have a mina that actually might see you? The mitzvah of Arba kaises are 4 cups of wine. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the Maral's question on Taisus. It's like the Maral on Taisus. What are you mishing around Taisus between kiddush, which you're kaveh ala kais, but there's no intrinsic mitzvah in the ayin? Answers the Maral. You see, Taisus held not like that. See, Taisus held when you make it on the kais of wine, the mamish is a mitzvah in the wine, or else there's no kasha, or else there's no tushtel. The fact that he asked and said that you should go ahead and arba kaisis and you should be mitzi, obviously held is a mitzvah in the wine similar to the arba kaisis, or else there's also no kasha.
How do you interpret the word zachreu al yayin?
What?
Zachreu al yayin. So how, according to the Taisus, to your kasha, not the way Taisus holds.
The Maral?
Yeah. So what's zachreu al yayin?
They were koivei. Once they were koivei al yayin, there's a mitzvah in the yayin. You know, that's goof what they did. They said the mitzvah of kiddush is totally in the yayin. That's what they did. That's exactly what they did.
Okay.
So again, it's a fascinating idea. So those are 2 kashas. So we have one kasha of miyashiv, the din of arba kaisis versus what? Versus yayin, the kiddush. The kasha is a great kasha. The teretz you have to say Taisus holds. A second kasha which I have to get a teretz for, which I'm working on, is why does Rashi go over here and say if you eat the matzah, you shouldn't eat before samech limit, because what? Because you should eat the mitzvah when what? Unless you want to say like this. Could be like Taisus like this. I'm thinking out loud. You're gonna get to the point, let's say level number 2. Good? Level number 2. You ate, yeah? would you be Yoitza level number 2, the mitzvah of matzah? Like Rabbeinu Tam. You would be, right? So therefore, if I could be Yoitza the mitzvah, why am I not permitted to eat? I'll be Yoitza the mitzvah. So I have a full stomach, but I'll be Yoitza the mitzvah, correct? Ella, so what's the whole reason you don't eat? Is to be Yoitza the mitzvah in the best possible way, which is what? With nothing in your stomach, which will be a hiddur there. So that would explain the hiddur mitzvah over here. Since I can be, what is hiddur mitzvah, guys? Guys, what's hiddur mitzvah? I'm Yoitza the mitzvah, but there's a better way, right? That's why I'm working on that. But I'm saying there's a better way. You know, you take an esrog. It's not the prettiest esrog in the world. You're Yoitza, right? You have tefillin. So I still remember when I brought my tefillin, my Zaydas, that's how I bought me tefillin. We checked. The first time I checked them was I was in my 20s, and the Sefer gave me the he opened up and he said, I felt there. They weren't nice. They weren't pushing nice. So the reason I'm bringing this example is years ago, my Daf Yomi Pesachim, they brought me to tefillin. They did. And they're talking about 25 years ago. They brought me a new pair of tefillin, and they're gorgeous. And anytime the Sefer over there goes, huh? Was I Yoitza the mitzvah all the years? Of course I was. But it's a hidden mitzvah, right? You have a beautiful pair of tefillin. Memela, if you have a full stomach, not to the point of Yom Kippur full stomach, where you pata, but the second level, right? Where there's always room for jello, good. There's always room for matzah, right? You would be Yoitza the mitzvah, correct? But not by eating anything, you Yoitza the mitzvah in which eifin? Mitzvah in an eifin of hiddur. And that would be why Rashi explained in Mishnah why not to eat.
According to Taisus, you would not be able to, if you don't have wine, you wouldn't be able to make Kiddush on Challah Shabbos?
Yeah, you could. So they took that and they said, in lieu of that, so now the pas becomes you convey on that pas. Right, same thing.
So the heater is the opposite, not to do. Most times the heater is.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good teretz. So I get scared. I'm not sure. Yeah, no, but that's in the chefza. This is in the gab. That's in the chefza. This is in the gab. A much bigger difference, Ash.
Yeah.
So this is in the chefza.
But it's not to do.
Again, but it's much bigger chiluk. In Asiyas and mitzvah, there's no difference. There's no chefza. Okay, so again, it's just I just want to whet your appetite. This is, we get a chance. We seldom get a chance to learn a little bit, right? So it's geschmack, right? Okay, let's see the Gemara. Okay, so now we're in a question of Rav Huna's teretz. It's just to go Chaz Riba. Rav Huna's teretz was that our mishnahs are going according to Rabbi Yossi. Why does Rabbi Yossi hold that by Pesach he's moida that you can't eat from Samech Lemincha a half hour before Mincha. Samech Lemincha, you can't eat a half hour before. That's what he said. So now, and our mishnah is going according to Rabbi Yossi. Says the Gemara. Mi nicha ul Rav Huna 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down Kufam and Aleph. Ul Rav Huna mi nicha, and to Rav Huna, is it really good? That what? That the Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi. I will Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Yochanan. Be tema Rabbi Avo Rabbi Yossi. But Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Chanina. Halacha ki Rabbi Yeshua be'erev Pesach. The halacha is like Rabbi Yeshua when. Halacha Rabbi Yehuda be'erev Pesach. Now, guys, let's stop there. When you say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda erev Pesach, it must be when you have to say the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. It must be who argues? Rabbi Yossi. What was Rav Huna's teretz? Rabbi Yossi's moida by erev Pesach. So right there is your kasha. I'm going to continue on, but your kasha is right there. It says over here, the halacha Rabbi Yossi be'erev Shabbos. Now, when it says halacha Rabbi Yehuda be'erev Pesach, mechal the pligi, perish. Rabbi Yossi argues across the board, side by Shabbos, side by Pesach. You're able to eat till it gets dark. And Rabbi Yehuda says no. In both places, you got to stop. So how can you Rav Huna say that Rabbi Yossi is moida erev Pesach when Rav Yirmiyah named Rabbi Yochanan said that what? That the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. Says the Gemara, no. Says the Gemara, Mechal b'Bilei like halacha Mechal the pligi behafsaka. Pirish. They do argue, but not in what you think they argue. They argue l'inyan being mafsik, whether if you started a meal beheter, this is not a sugya, because everyone's moida if you started the meal before Samech Lamincha, you can continue. Even Rabbi Yehuda says you can continue. If I started my meal, let's say in a perfect day, right? What's that scenario? 3 o'clock. If I started my meal at 2:30, Rabbi Yehuda, who says you can't start at 3 o'clock, would be Maida, you can continue. Now, the question is, when you get to Shabbos, do you have to be mafsik or not? That's a separate machlokes. So there, he says the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda and not like Rabbi Yossi. But the Inyan Erev Pesach, Rabbi Yossi Taka is moided to Rabbi Yehuda that once you get to 3 o'clock, you can't begin. But this is the halacha of hafsaka. What's happening over here? Guys, you're eating. It was like, mamish, this guy, you're eating. Right? You started beheta. Kam Shabbos. What do? Says Rabbi Yehuda, you stop, you make Birchas Hamazon, and you make Kiddush. That's it. You oike the shulchan, and you bench. You start your meal, a new Shabbos meal. Says Rabbi Yossi, you go straight through. And when you bench? Afterwards. You'll bench afterwards. You know, not mafsik. That's the machlokes. The pligi b'afsav, the Tanya, mafsikin l'shabbosais divrei Rabbi Yehuda. You're mafsik with shabbosais according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi ain't mafsikin. You're not mafsik. You're not mafsik. Umayse Rabbi Shimon Megamliel, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Shein Ksubim not b'Bnei Brak b'Ako. The Kiddush Alei Mayoim, and it became Shabbos. The Kiddush Alei Mayoim became Shabbos. Now, at this point in time, what would Rabbi Yehuda say? What would Rabbi Yehuda say right now? You got to stop, right? What would Rabbi Yossi say? Keep on going. So Amalei, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Yossi, Beribi. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said to Rabbi Yossi, Chalafta, Beribi, the God Lador, Beribi, you're the God Lador. With Soincha Nafsik, is your rotzen that we should stop. The Nechesh Ledivrei Yehuda Chavereinu. Again, Rabbi Yehuda was sitting there, right? So Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said to Rabbi Yossi, in the presence of Rabbi Yehuda, should we go ahead and stop? Should we go ahead and stop? So Amaloi said Rabbi Yossi, B'chol yoim b'yoim atem mechavev dvarai lefnei Rabbi Yehuda. All the days you mechavev my words, you make dear my words by keeping the halacha like me in front of Rabbi Yehuda. V'yachshav atem mechavev divrei Rabbi Yehuda b'fanai, and now in front of me you want to do like Rabbi Yehuda? Hagam lichbay shesamalka imi Rabbias. How's that for timing, right? Day off. You want to go ahead and capture the queen of my house? This is what Achashverosh told Haman, right? When he found her on the bed. So here also, you want to embarrass me? You want to embarrass me in my own house by going ahead and doing like Rabbi Yehuda? So Amalei Shimon Gamliel said, "Cain, I nifsuk shama. We won't be mafsik. Shema yira tamida. Maybe the tamidim will see. The yikvo Allah l'dayris. We kabei Allah l'dayris." So Amru, they said, like Zazam Misham at Shekava Allah Rabbi Yossi. They didn't leave there until they were kaveh Allah like Rabbi Yossi. Now, again, this is not the case of our Mishnah. Our case of our Mishnah is you hadn't been eating, whether you can start eating, right? Until what time can you eat? Over here, everyone agrees you started beheta. You started beheta. And Rabbi Yehuda is moed, if you start beheta, you don't have to stop at mincha. You keep on going. But when it comes Shabbos, you have to be mafsik by going ahead around and benching and saying Kiddush. Rabbi Yossi says you make Kiddush a little after that. You make Kiddush after that. They ask the question, don't you need Kiddush Macham Suda? You finished your meal. Right. Guys, you finished your meal already. Don't you need Kiddush Macham Suda? You finished your meal already. So Taisha's answer is, since you're still sitting there, it's considered Macham Suda. Since you're still sitting there, it's considered Macham Suda. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Ein halacha, halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, but like Rabbi Yossi. Not like Rabbi Yehuda, not like Rabbi Yossi. Ella, Pyrus Mappa. Go ahead, spread a mappa. Where did I hear this before? Umakdish and make kiddush. No? Yeah. No, I don't. I really wasn't there. I wasn't there. Okay, guys, we just did this, right? There was a Shaila Purim, Pesach, when Purim goes into Shabbos, what do you do when they have your Suda? So by and large, I think most people, before Chatzos, they had a Suda. And they continued on, and they stopped before Shabbos sometimes. They got ready, and then they had a Shabbos Suda. That would be a normal thing to do, right? Certain people didn't do that. Some people began beheta, right? They began beheta after mincha, right? Before mincha, before the Zman of Samach Mincha. Not Thursday night. No, that's not Samach Mincha.
That's what the student did now. This Friday. They started
I know some Litvaks did it also.
And what they did was they ate and they at the Shabbos they were Peiris Mappa. They made Kiddush. They didn't say a bracha on the yayin, and they davened Ma'ariv after the Suda. If they made it that far, and so that's what they did. And so this is mamish in Yani Diyama. Mamish. It's amazing. Like not only is it in Pesach in Yani Diyama, even in Purim it's in Yani Diyama.
This year Purim.
What?
It's this year
And it's this year Purim. It's holiday. What?
Curious. You say Alanisim by Meyer.
Shabbos, right?
But some Muslim I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's 2 days.
Oh, this year.
There's 2 days. Okay. So now, guys, look, you have two drachim over here. You have the derech of Rabbi Yehuda, you stop completely. You have the derech of Rabbi Yossi, you go straight through. And Shmuel says it's neither one. Shmuel says, and again, he can't argue. As we're going to see Rashbam in a second. He can't argue on Shmuel is an Amoyri. He can't argue with Tanoim. He says that you know what you do? You do the third option. You Peiris Map and you make Kiddush. Not like Rabbi Yossi says you make Kiddush after the Suda. Not like Rabbi Yehuda says that you stop the Suda. But you go ahead, you Peiris Mappa, meaning you spread a mappa, a handtuch, a towel, or some type of what we call a decal, a matzah decal. What's it called? Not when you cover it, a chalad
Chaladekel.
decal. Okay.
Covered.
I was speaking Yiddish to I forgot what I was speaking to. I'm looking at Benji like.
Challah cover, no?
You
I
know,
mean a challah cover.
you know that.
The challah roll.
In terms of meat.
Okay. Anyway, so this is a different person. Mabba Magdish. So now look at Rashi, guys. Let's see Rashi. Rashbam. So it says Rashbam. V'loy Reb Yosi. The last Rashbam on the page. Aminon ain't tzarich lahafsek klal. You don't have to be mafsek at all. Alayigma sudasai. Finish the suda. Afilu mishecha shecha. And even when it gets dark, the yivarchu birchas hamazayin, and you'll bench. The achakach maybe l'kais sheni l'kiddush hayayim, and then you'll bring a second kais for Shabbos. Kidatanya l'kaman b'shmaitza. But that's not what you do. Ela peiris mappa ala Michael. Throw the mappa on your food. Kidin kol Shabbos hashana sheviu lechem ala shulchan. Koidim kiddush, like you brought lechem on the shulchan before kiddush. Kidinan l'kaman. Inami mishum silik psura, or you would remove the table. They had portable tables. V'yachach oima kiddush hayoim, and afterwards you would say what? You'd say kiddush ala kois. V'chayzev oichel v'goyim sudasai. And that's what they did. V'nira lebe'enai, says the Rashbam, the svili the shmuel the halacha kreb yosi. Kidetani bebraisa shekaba halacha kamaisai. Like we learned in the Braisa, and we've kabed halacha like yosi. El sheba lahachmir al atzmai. He wanted to be machmer on himself. Ktsas shlo yigma sudasai v'yagdish achakach. In other words, and I'll be between the second much. So that not to be going to the Suda, make Kiddush afterwards. Yagdish techila. First, go ahead and make Kiddush first. V'yakach yimek sudasai, and then be going to the Suda. Then imlay temahachi Shmuel the Amin and Keman. Fellas, in other words, Shmuel can't argue on Rabbi Yossi, and he can't argue on Rabbi Yehuda. So he said he agrees with Rabbi Yossi, but he was machmir. He agreed with Rabbi Yossi that you don't have to be mafsik, but he was machmir to say, don't make Kiddush at the end of the Suda like Rabbi Yossi, make Kiddush before. That was his choma. Yes, Moshe.
So I was going to ask how Shmuel is arguing on Tanaim, but even with the Rashbam, he says, Ein halacha Rabbi Yossi. So how is the Rashbam saying it's like Rabbi Yossi?
I think the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Shmuel ein halacha like Rabbi Yehuda like Rabbi Yossi, meaning like Rabbi Yossi that you don't like Rabbi Yossi that you don't make Kiddush at the end, you make it earlier. But he agrees about a hafsaka. In other words, the Kiddush seems to be the main point is whether you have to be mafsik or not. So in that he's saying you do kind of a medium type of thing. That you go ahead and you're mafsik by being paris mappa rather than what? Rather than going straight through.
I understand what he's saying. I just think it's fair to say that he's with Rabbi
You know what,
Yossi. When
in
he
the
says, the Lashon of the Gemara is not like that.
But he does say, he says like the Chachamim. He finds, Ella paris mappa magdish. Now we have a girsa like Chachamim. in Taisvis. Look at Taisvis. El Paris Mapu Magdish Pirish Rashbam. The Islay the Shmuel the Allah Kreb Yaisi. El Shmuel Hachmal Devarov. Shleidim Masu the Kodim Shiyedish. The Leitem Achi Shmuel Dama Command. The Bryce the Klein Paris Mapu Magdish. Like Mari Bavsaka. The Bryce that said Paris Map is not speaking about being mafsik. Achila. El Bo Lahas Lechol speaking about beginning to end. So it's speaking about this Brysa is speaking about whether you can begin to eat or not. It doesn't mention Paris Map at all. It just mentions whether you can begin eating or not. So like Rabbi Yossi, whether you have to be mafsik or not.
The question was how Shmuel argued with it. Shmuel was arguing, saying, how could Namor argue with it? Shmuel, right? Did he say?
Okay, the Brisa of Paris Mapa Magdish is speaking about where a person began beheta, and then you Paris Mapa. So he's not disagreeing by the hafsaka of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. He's applying that concept of Paris Mapa. So, Ein halacha like Rabbi Yehuda like Rabbi Yossi. Yeah, I hear you saying, Moshe. The lashon is funny. According to Taisus, there's a third Amorid, there's a Chachamim. Okay, anyway, weiter. In is it really so that it can be Paris Mapeh, the Omer of Tachlifu Barvdim Yom Shmuel, Kashem Shemafsikin LeKiddush, Ach Mafsikin LeHavdalah, right? Just like you be Mafsik for Kiddush, you're Mafsik for Havdalah. So you see that you could be mafsik. Now my mafsik in lav like kirish shulchan. So you see that it's not enough to be paris mappa, but you have to take away the shulchan. You're going from Shabbos to Motzei Shabbos. So you wanted to tell me if you're going from Chayil to Shabbos, it's enough to be paris mappa. We see when you're going from Shabbos to Chayil by Havdalah, it's not enough to be paris mappa. You have to in fact what? Have to in fact go and take away the table. So it's a kasha on Shmuel. It says Merloi, Rabbi Rav Huna, Loi Lamapa. You mafsik with what? You mafsik with a mappa. You mafsik with a mappa. It says, right, let's Rashbam, Kav mafsikin lavdola, Imhoyim Mesubim B'Shabbos, Ad Alayla, Mafsikin Achilas and Mavdilin, you mafsik Yachila and Mavdilin, and the Hafsaka is taking away the table. It says, no, my lava Kirich Shulchan, with the Kamar Kashem Mafsikin Mechlal, Leisagi B'Mappa, that it's not enough to go ahead and use a mappa. So when it says okay, this is right there. Okay, so we have a teretz. The teretz is that want that. The teretz is that you can use a mappa. It doesn't mean a kirish shulchan mamish. Okay, says the Gemara. Rabbi Rav Huna ikloi lebei reish galusa. Rabbi Rav Huna came to the house of reish galusa. I see tacha kamei. He brought a table in front of him. Paris mappa. He went ahead and spread on the table. Kiddush, he made Kiddush. This is what we do every week. The guy said nothing to do with the previous discussion. He wasn't speaking about a din to be mafsik, being Paris Mappa. Speaking about din, we have to be covered the chalas. In other words, the last Paris Mappa, guys, was guys, look at me. The last Paris Mappa was an action of like stopping something that was to happen before. So I was eating a meal before. I took my mappa, I covered it up. That was a intervention. It kind of was mafsik between this and that. There's another Paris mappa which has nothing whatsoever to do with that. It's the fact we cover our chalas b'shas kiddush, and that's what happened over here. So the reason we bring it in is just because you were Paris mappa, but not because it has any ramifications in halacha of the previous Gemara.
So here it sounds like they brought the meal before they made kiddush. They brought the whole table full of food before they made kiddush. That was the issue.
Paris being it's in Paris mappa.
In this case.
So what does he say? Rabbi Rav Huna kloile bereish galusa. So I see taka kamei and Paris mappa kiddush. They Paris mappa and they did the kiddush. That's what they did. That's what they did. So there's a very long reshbam over here. Let's go through part of it because I think it's important. I see takal kamei Paris map of Kiddush Tani Nami Hachi. V'loiga Asinim B'Kshavin Elachi Kamar. Eim Evian. V'Hachi Pirushay. Rabbi Rav Chana Ikloila Bereish Galusa. V'Hoya Oichlin Kaidim Chashecha. They didn't eat before it was nighttime. Ula'acha Sheyatzim Beis HaKnesses Hichshech. When they came out of Beis Knesses, it was dark. So I see Takel Kamei. They brought the table in front of him. Heviu es pas ala shulchan. They brought the pas on the shulchan. K'meishna anu oisim. Koidim kiddush. And they brought it out before kiddush. Poris mapa ala lechem. He spread the map on the lechem. V'yachkach kiddush. Lefi sheber sono lehoy mevinas alechem ala shulchan ad la'acharach kiddush. Because what he wanted, why did he have to be Paris mapa? What he really wanted to do is first make kiddush and then bring out the lechem. Kiddutanya l'kameas. We'll see later on. Lefikach. Therefore, since he had something in front of him that he did not want in front of him, Paris mapa lechem, and he put lechem on top. He put a map on the lechem. V'hainu kain silik shulchan. That's kind of like removing the table that it should be in front of you. By covering it up, you're making a statement. It's not in front of me. Ukamisha ain't diamond. It's like it's not there. V'rayil dava shekain oisin. They kind of come on. Moskin like kois rishain. We go ahead and dilute the first cup. V'yachich maybe a fun of Yerakos v'chazeres. Speaking about the seder. Matpel v'chazeres. Mechal that a hashta. Like I see, it wasn't there until then. The time we could the precious b'shiltis the Ravachai going the pashas vayishma yisroi the kosev b'hu hachi ukrori taka mikame. They would bring the table before the likdish, the kedusha, the Shabbat, the leimikavinon. Right before Shabbos, before they made kiddush, they wouldn't bring it. My timer ki hechi de tesi suda liyikara de Shabbata. By going ahead and making kiddush, guys, you made kiddush. You makabel Shabbos, right? And now when you bring the food out, what's the statement? This food is coming the covered Shabbos Kodesh. What was the problem of having the food there before they made kiddush? In other words, clearly, when he covered it up, he didn't want it there, correct? What he wanted was it shouldn't be there. Why did he not want the food to be there until after kiddush? So by making kiddush and you bring it out, it's like, you're bringing out the good stuff now to cover this moment, right? So therefore, that's what he wanted.
Well, is it in the brachos?
This is when they had portable tables, guys. This is when
In
they
the
had,
brachos.
this is when they had portable tables. It was a big difference. The hechi the krivu loy misalkin and lay. Where they bought it, you don't remove it. El paris love mappa. You go ahead and spread a map upon it with magdish. The Tanya we learned, as we're going to see in a second. Yeshavin shemevinas ashulchan elam ken kiddush. You only bring the table if you make kiddush. The hevi paris love mappa umekadish. The hechi the asl sudasa. Mid anohar bit mali Shabbata, they kiddush la yuma paris mappa. If they began already, umagdash mitamzeh noig lifras mappa lechem ad laach kiddush b'shavyan. Now that's one derech. That's one derech to learn that is brought out l'kavod. Now there's another derech. There's another derech way you paris the mappa, and this is one you're familiar with. Is that there was mun. There was mun. The mun had a covering on the bottom and the top. The mun had a covering on the bottom and the top. So l'zeichel mun, we have lechem mishnah, right? Lechem mishnah is mun didn't fall on Shabbos. It fell erev Shabbos. Lechem mishnah 2 portions. Mun was covered with dew on the bottom and dew on the top, right? And therefore we cover our lechem mishnah with a mappa. My nafkamina halacha, guys, beautiful nafkamina. Let's say you made kiddush and it wasn't on the table yet. Your chalus was not on the table. You made kiddush. When you bring it out the chalus, do you have to cover them or not? Light that sad that it's mikud yaka the Shabbos. You're bringing them out. You wouldn't have to cover them. Light that sad it's the man. You'd still have to cover them. Because the man you need the other covering. So it really is enough kamina what the reason that you're covering is. If the reason is Yaakov the Shabbos and you don't want the meal in front of you then, and therefore you're paris mappa, if the meal wasn't in front of you, you wouldn't have to be paris mappa. But if the reason is also the mun that you need a covering the top and the bottom, you would have to cover both. That would be enough community.
Isn't there also a reason of kadima bebrachos?
Again, that's the embarrassment. Again, that embarrassment, you don't want to go ahead and embarrass, right? You don't shy, right? of the matzah, of the lechem. Therefore, you're putting a kadima of that. You cover it up as well. That would be also true. That's also bought.
Then you only have to cover the top. You don't have to put one on the bottom.
You always have to put it on the bottom
Why? Because only if you
because
go
that's
back-
the mon.
No, that's if the fetters is long. But you say that the fetters is only because you don't want to embarrass the bed. So you only have to cover the top. You don't have to put that on the bottom.
Correct.
How do you go, Shabbos, and you left the Mishnah, how do you go from Kol
Good
to
question.
Shabbos?
How do you go from
Kol to Shabbos without washing again and making.
again? If you pass like Rabbi Yossi, you go straight through.
But then you don't have.
You go straight through. There's no, you can't. You go. You have a suda. You have a suda going. You're not even making kiddush al yayin. You're just making kiddush. You're not making. Forget left Mishnah. You're not doing it.
And then.
You're not doing it.
And there's no hagafen on it.
There's no guff in the wine either. That's what.
That's because you made a hagafen already.
Correct. Correct. That was the halacha. This PS Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. The people who were Paris Mappa, they went through. They stopped. They Paris Mappa. They made kiddush. They did not make a bracha on. They didn't make a bracha on. Forget the wine. I also saw. And what about if you don't have wine and you're making a bracha on bread? You magdish on bread. You said you still don't make on bread. You still have the previous bread. Again, you wouldn't even make a bracha on the bread.
You don't even have to watch it.
That's still considered a Suda Shabbos?
You will Paris Mappa. That's what Paris Mappa does.
So it's just
That's all. That's the chiddush. That's the chiddush of this Gemara. That intervention, Mordechai, of putting the mappa on and being magdish at the time separates the two. That's exactly. I find it so fascinating. We just did this. We just did this.
Once you're doing that, you're breaking up the meal, and that should be a whole new meal.
Right.
And then maybe you should be making.
Again,
you should be making a
no. We just have to go ahead and make a distinction between the two. That's all you need. And Hilchos brachas, you can't make a new bracha. You know, bracha doesn't. The new meal does not create a need for a new bracha.
Unless you walk.
Again, if you leave and you go back, but yeah, you're sitting by the table. Okay, so we have three sheetas, guys. Right? Let's reiterate what we saw so far. Right? Let's see what we saw so far. We have the sheeta of we have the sheeta of Rabbi Yehuda that you have hafsaka, that if you're going along what and you have to be mafsik, you have to stop everything, bench everything, make new brachas, start anew. The sheeta Rabbi Yossi continues straight through, bench afterwards, kiddush, make kiddush afterwards, right? You have to be bench and make kiddush. It is. That's what Rabbi Yossi says. You have to be bench and make kiddush. You need kiddush makom suda. You're sitting by the suda that says kiddush makom suda. That's Rabbi Yossi shita. Says the Rashbam and Shmuel. Shmuel's coming to be machmer. What's the chumrah? To make kiddush earlier. To make kiddush earlier, but you don't have to be mafsik. I'm making it's one big meal. It'll be paris mappa. So that was one paris mappa. Now we have a second paris mappa. This second paris mappa has nothing to do with intervention. It has to do with either the yakar of Shabbos or the mun. And why are you covering the bread? You shouldn't be the table in the first place. You should make kiddush without in front of you. So therefore, what's in front of you to go ahead and you cover it up. You cover it up. And we spoke out the Yidamon. Okay, Geshmak. But again, the paris mappa, you were aware. The second paris mappa has nothing to do with the first one. Nothing to do with the first one. Again, his kash is only in the lashon. Toysa said he has the chacham going with him, right? Like Toysa's Moshe's kash is not a kasha because he did find a tana that held like him. Okay, Rabbi Rafuni Klal Rabbi Yosef. I still come at Tama Paras Map V'Kiddush. Tani Nam Yachi B'Kshavim Shem Edvin Es HaShulchan. Both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda on Maida. You don't bring the shulchan. Elam Kain Kiddush. Only if you make Kiddush. Don't bring the table unless you make Kiddush. And maybe if you bring the table, Paras Map Mekadesh. We learned one brisa Shavin, both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda, who argue by whether you begin the meal or don't begin the meal on Erev Pesach Shem Aschilin. But Anidach Shavin Shem Aschilin. Someone says you begin. They equal that you don't begin, and they equal that you do begin. Now, Pishlema Haitana Shavin Shem Aschilin Mishkachala Erev Pesach. Very good, guys. Like Erev Pesach, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi would be in agreement that why Slamich Lemincha you can't. Both Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda would agree. Ela Hadatanya Shavin Shem Aschilin Emas. When they agree that you do begin, we're speaking about name of Erev Shabbos. If you can tell me Erev Shabbos, you could begin eating Samach Lemincha, Hamif like Polik. They argue. Rabbi Yehuda argued. Says Lekasha Kan Koidim Tesha kan la'achat teisha. I spoke this out to you. When did Rabbi Yehuda say you can't begin? That's teisha at 9 hours. That 9 hours is what? A half hour before 2.5. And therefore Rabbi Yehuda says you don't begin. What happens if it's 2:30? What happens if it's 3.5 hours? And he said they both agree that you could begin.
Uh,